Story. If you saw her on the street, you would have said she was a blessing. A sweet old woman. White hair, big glasses, elegant clothes, always smiling at the neighbors. In Sacramento, California, Dorothy Puente was known as an angel of mercy. A beautiful house, a garden full of roses, and an open door for anyone who had nowhere else to go. One neighbor later said, "She always said good morning, always asked if we needed anything. We never suspected her, not even once." But on November 11th, 1988, police entered that garden and started digging, and the smell rising from the soil was not the smell of roses. Officer John swung his shovel into the ground. Clank. Something solid. He dropped to his knees, brushing the dirt away with his hands. It was a human leg bone, still wearing a shoe. One officer later testified, "The moment I saw the shoe, I knew we were dealing with something very heavy." And Dorothy? She was standing there watching. No shaking, no shock. With perfect politeness, she said, "Officer, may I just step out and grab a cup of coffee from the shop next door?" And unbelievably, they let her go. Because of her age, because of her kind appearance, Dorothy Puente walked away, leaving behind 7 bodies buried beneath her rose garden. Welcome to the story of the grandmother who turned the poor's welfare into a blood-soaked business. Dorothy wasn't a wolf hiding inside a cute grandmother by accident. Her life began in bitterness. She was born in 1929. Her parents were alcoholics. They died when she was still a child. She grew up in orphanages, and there she learned one lesson early. Lying is how you survive. A former shelter worker once said she lied even about small things, as if lying was second nature to her. She grew older, smarter, and became a professional con artist. She married 4 times. Her first marriage was Norman Johansson. She was only 16 years old. She lied about her age, had 2 daughters, then abandoned them for nightlife and scams. When Norman discovered she was stealing his money and forging his signature, the marriage ended. One of his relatives later said, "She smiled while stealing from him, like guilt didn't exist." The second marriage, Maurice Schiff, it lasted only months. He discovered she was using his name and credit to commit fraud and rack up debt. He divorced him and ran. The third marriage, Robert Puente, 19 years younger than her. She controlled him completely, worked as a home care nurse, and slowly began building the image of the sweet grandmother. They divorced, but she kept the name Puente because it gave her respectability. The fourth marriage, Pedro Montalvo, an older, sick man. He discovered she was controlling his money and humiliating him. He escaped. A family acquaintance later said, "After that marriage, it felt like she stopped seeing people as humans. They became numbers." She then worked as a nurse in homes for the elderly, and that's where she found the real treasure. Lonely seniors, no family, monthly welfare checks, and no one asking questions. She learned about sedatives, she learned how to forge signatures, and the big plan was born. Before taking in homeless men, there was Ruth Monroe, a friend, a partner. They opened a small restaurant together. Dorothy was a good cook, but greed took over. She wanted the restaurant. She wanted Ruth's money. She convinced Ruth to come live with her. 1 week later, an overdose of sedatives. Ruth died. A neighbor said, "We heard Dorothy crying and screaming. We thought she was devastated." But the truth? Dorothy took Ruth's jewelry, her money, and handed Ruth's children a bag, saying, "Here, take your mother's belongings." She killed her mother, robbed her, and returned the stolen items with her own hands. She told the police she committed suicide, and the police believed her. That's when Dorothy understood the game completely. Appearance was everything. She dyed her hair white, wore loose dresses, soft cardigans. She became the sweet grandmother. And then the homeless began arriving. sent by social services. One social worker later said, "We thought she was an angel. She took the cases no one else wanted." The system worked like this. A homeless man moves in. She feeds him, cares for him, gains his trust. Then she convinces him to sign papers making her his representative payee. A few days later, a good meal, a drink, sedatives. The victim falls asleep and never wakes up. A former resident said, "We'd wake up and find an empty bed. She'd say he traveled. At night, she dug in the garden or hired someone passing by with excuses. I'm planting a tree, fixing the pipes." The next morning, the bank, the check, the money. By the 1980s, Dorothy had collected around $87,000. Plastic surgery, expensive clothes, perfumes, a new car. One neighbor said, "We smelled something awful." She said it was sewage. She spread lime to dissolve flesh and hide the smell. 7 welfare checks from people buried beneath her feet. Until the final victim, Alvaro Montoya, diagnosed with schizophrenia, quiet, harmless. Social worker Judy Moyse truly cared about him. Then he disappeared. Judy asked Dorothy. She said he went to live with his family. Judy replied, "That's a lie. Alvaro has no family." She kept pushing, calling, pressuring. One officer later said, "Her persistence is what brought us back." When police first questioned Dorothy, she panicked. He went for a walk and never came back. The residents had been coached, but one man broke. In a low voice, he said, "He made me dig a large hole in the garden, said it was plumbing." Police smelled decomposition. Dorothy said, "Rat poison, dead cats." Neighbors said, "The smell's been here for months." They drove a metal rod into the soil. It came out, smelling of human decay. Officer John said, "Get the shovels, we're not leaving." A rug, a bone, a shoe, a mass grave. And Dorothy kept acting. "I'm an old woman, they're framing me." The officers hesitated, and when she asked for coffee, they let her walk. That's when the manhunt began. She fled to Los Angeles, sat in a bar, looking for another victim. But the man saw the news, recognized her face, and called the police. The trial. Dorothy entered wearing her best dress, a flower brooch, an elegant handbag. One juror later said, "Her face was comforting, but the evidence was terrifying." Forensics found powerful sedatives in the victim's blood. A handwriting expert proved more than 60 welfare checks were forged after the victims' deaths. The sentence? 3 life sentences, no parole. Dorothy showed no tears. She died in 2011 at 82 years old. Her final words? "I am innocent." The house still stands, now a true crime tourist attraction, with a cardboard cutout of Dorothy smiling behind the window. Ending. The story of Dorothy Puente tells us one thing: not every hand that offers you tea wants you well. Sometimes it wants your welfare check.
This photo shows Dorothy. This photo shows Judy.
Follow us for real stories, darker than fiction.